Welcome, everyone. When submitting this talk, I said it would be in German, but yesterday I decided differently, and I hope it's okay for everybody to make this accessible to more people. So, the title now is Climate Action Now, How Green Coding Can Find Its Way into Your Daily Programming Routine. First of all, who am I? My name is Anita. I'm a software engineer. I studied computer science some, 20 years ago or so. And the last 13 years I spent in the same company called Neuland, Büro für Informatik, as a programmer mostly. But about 2 years ago or so, I switched gears and stopped programming actually. And today I'm the head of sustainability for my company. And the topics I deal with on a daily basis are sustainable e-commerce, also circular economy, and green coding. And this is what this talk is going to be about. So, what do I want to achieve in this talk? First of all, I want to raise awareness around the topic. Also, hopefully about some things that programmers usually don't get in contact with. That is law, and what's to come from Brussels, from the EU. After that, before that, actually, we're going to talk about the problems associated with coding and the environment. And I'll finish this with some tools that you can take home and that will hopefully give your own journey a kickstart. So let's start. What are we talking about? ICT causes 2 to 4% of global emissions, which is a lot. E-waste is the fastest growing waste category. In 2021, this was 57 million metric tons. That is about as much as 125,000 jumbo jets, or the weight of the Great Chinese Wall. I'll let that sink in for a second. And in 2030, it's expected to be 75 million metric tons. So we'll talk about hardware at some point as well. In 2025, the amount of collected data will double every 12 hours. And the amount of data that is collected rises exponentially. About 70% of this data is never used. And what is used is often misused. Cookies sent to mobile phones in the EU account for as many emissions as about 950,000 people. Bitcoin produces 64.8 million tons of CO2 a year, comparable to Israel. And that is about 360 kilograms for every single transaction. Yeah. And AI plays in its own league, and I won't touch on that any further today, but if you want to read more on this, you can refer to Kasper Groß, Albin Ludvigsen, who does a lot of research on this. He's the head data person for the Danish National Police and a data scientist, yeah. Okay, this having said, let's talk about something that we often forget that is called the carbon tunnel vision. We often think about CO2 being the most important thing for our atmosphere and for climate change, but of course there's other things as well. For example, the water crisis that plays a big role when talking about data centers, for example, because they use up a lot of water, and most of this water that is used evaporates and thus is lost. And water vapor is the most important greenhouse gas, actually, much more important than any other of these. But the effect it has depends on whether it's vapor or it's clouds or so. So that's a little more complicated than just that. Another one, biodiversity loss. That's something we don't usually talk about at all right now, but that will come a lot in the next years. And how is ICT connected to biodiversity loss? It's about where does the hardware come from? Where do the materials for hardware come from? What happens to the ecosystems where our raw materials are taken from? And another one, ecotoxicity. This one is related to all the toxic stuff that comes with our hardware when it's disposed, but also at the moment where the raw materials are gathered. So what does the EU do about this? What does it plan? But not only plan, because most of what I will tell you now is already past the process of planning. I'll only talk about one thing, and that is the CSRD. That stands for Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive. And what is this thing? It's a reporting standard for companies that is very much comparable to the financial reporting on basically the same level, so of importance as well. That says that if you have a company that has more than 500 people, there's two more criteria, but basically 500 people, then you have to gather data from starting next year in January, and you have to report on this in 2025. And if you have more than 250 people, you have one more year. So from the 1st of January in 2025, you have to start gathering your data, and then you have to report on this. And the CSRD, it also affects your entire supply chain, upstream and downstream. That means if you are a very small company that builds software for a big company, then you have to be able to say how many emissions does my software cause. And if you buy software from somebody else, this has to be included, and so on, all the way through to where anything that you use comes from. So that is also the data centers you use, for example. They're in your so-called scope 3, so everything that is anywhere in your supply chain, up and downstream. Then there's a central concept in the CSRD. That one is called the double materiality. And that means you have to assess what does my business, how does my business affect the outside world? And that includes the environment as well. And how does the environment and the outside world affect my business? So what kind of risks do come in from the outside, and how do I pose a risk on everybody else? And the company needs a strategy on how to become Paris compliant. So how do you want to reduce your emissions to a level that are in line with the 1.5 degree goal that Paris has? So if you read this, it's no wonder that Gartner thinks that sustainability will be a competitive differentiator when selecting IT vendors in the future. And they think that by 2026, 75% of organizations will increase business with IT vendors that have demonstrable sustainability goals and timelines, and will seek to replace vendors that do not. Okay, so now, what are our levers? This is from a very high perspective at first. What you can see here is the estimated footprint of digital life in Germany. That was from 2020, and I don't have newer information on this, but this is about 40% is down here, manufacturing, and about 60% is usage. And I have to say it's only Germany, and it doesn't include some things that I would include in here and that this year's RD would include as well. For example, hardware of data centers. So the part of usage can be directly influenced by the way we build our software. And the hardware part can be influenced as well by us by designing for old hardware. Okay, next one. I'll read this to you. So, this is from a guy called Danny van Kooten. He's a web developer, I think, and something else as well, but basically a web developer. He said, I've spent the last month trying to reduce the carbon footprint of the websites I have some control over. When talking about this with other people, they often look at me blankly before asking, aren't you taking this a little too far? The simple answer is no. In fact, it is probably the most effective use of my time when it comes to reducing carbon dioxide emissions. Just last week, I reduced global emissions by an estimated 59,000 kilograms per month by removing a 20 kilobyte JavaScript dependency in MailChimp for WordPress. There's no way I can have that kind of effect in other areas of my life. And he said that shaving off a single kilobyte in a file that is being loaded on 2 million websites reduces CO2 emissions by an estimated 2,950 kilograms per month. Now, what is 2,950 kilograms? It's about twice as much as one flight from here to Brazil and back. So just those 20 kilobytes, you could have flown to Brazil and back, but I don't want you to fly to Brazil now just because you do your work a little better. This one I shamelessly stole from a guy called Tim Schade, who's really awesome. If you want to check him out and follow him, he does really awesome stuff. And he's a green coder as well. And he once estimated how this flight to Brazil could be balanced. So, for example, we have using Avro instead of JSON. If you have 5,000 tracks per second, that's for one person. Or if 9 people turn off their laptop at night, that saves 175 kilograms per year if one person does that, and so on. So you can check these out. These are all very small things. And you see, the more people do this, the more can be saved. So the bigger the N is that you deal with, the more numbers, the more people use your software, the bigger is the impact that you can have. So the more emissions can be saved, or if you turn it around, will be caused by the smallest of changes. And if you go home, I want you to think about, where is my biggest N? So where is the part in my software that gets used by most people, or that gets called the most often, and so on? And where can I have the smallest changes that will save a lot of emissions in the long run or in the short run? And the good thing about software is that it's relatively easy to save emissions compared to something like a manufacturing supply chain of a retailer or so. Okay, now I brought you something that is kind of my legacy if I fall over dead tomorrow. And that is a mirror board, however you pronounce it, that is packed with everything that I've gathered over those last 2 years, and every bit of information I found somewhere, I tried to get the essence of information out there and put it on this mirror board. So now we'll see if this works. If I can go over and check this out live. Okay, now I have to see. So what is on there? First of all, up here, if you want to contact me, hi, I'm Anita. I'm on LinkedIn. Here you can see the green software principles. It basically boils down to re-architect, resize, relocate. You can join a community. For example, the awesome Green Software Foundation, who does a lot of good work around this field, or the SDIA, that is the Sustainable Digital Infrastructure Alliance. They do a lot of work around reducing the emissions of data centers. Or Climate Action Tech. You have techies in there, but also people who have tech startups, for example. Or Climate Change AI for AI people. And Leaders for Climate Action is a community of people who want to bring sustainability into their everyday work life. Pick one. You can join for free and exchange knowledge there. There are trainings on the topic. Bit hard to read. For example, this is a great introduction, the Green Software for Practitioners course from the Linux Foundation. Or this one is a 2 weeks course that you can do at your own pace. This one, this here is about 2 to 4 hours, depending on how deep into the topic you are already. And this one is a bit longer. There are great books. For example, the Sustainable IT Playbook for Technology Leaders. This one is geared towards CIO, CDO people and so on. So it's for creating a strategy for your company IT towards sustainability. Building green software. That one is written by 3 women who also are in the Green Software Foundation as very active contributors. And it's currently being written, and you can read one kapitel, what's it called? Chapter each month, thank you. And it will be done around June or July next year. Or sustainable web design. If you're a web design person, this book is a little older already, I think 2 years or so, by Tom Greenwood, who has done a lot of good work in the topic, pioneer work. So, and then we have, what can you do as a web developer, or as a backend developer, or as a DevOps person, or as a software architect? And it's all categorized into, for example, design, tech, general, depending on what applies to the role. And here you have everything in one small sentence that you can read in white papers or whatever it's from. This whole topic is currently evolving. There's a lot of knowledge flying around through the internet and through communities, and oftentimes things cite each other, and at some point you feel like there's not much more that still adds to it. So it's all boiled down to those small pages here. So what do you have here? Yeah, you can check this out by yourself at some point when you're back home. There's a lot in there. And over here is, again, from Tim Schade. He's great, by the way. It's measuring tools. And what he does is tell you which tool you can use for what use case, depending on what you have and what you need. And if you open the original in GitHub, you can also click on those fields and the respective page will open and you can check it out directly. And down here we have API data sources, for example, electricity maps that you can use to check out how green or gray the grid will be, let's say, for example, tomorrow. And then you can use that to schedule your batch jobs within a given time frame to check out for how to use the greenest electricity for your jobs, for example. What time is basically the same thing, but for the US. I think it's only for the US. And Climatic offers an API that can check for how carbon intensive the things you do are. Yeah, so this is my report. And I hope a lot of you guys will check this out and use it for your daily work. Okay, green coding Miro. Okay, will this go on? Yes, so how to start? I think the best thing is to do a sort of grassroots movement. Just pick the people that you know that might have interest in this, or just call for whoever has interest within your company. Group up, try things out, share knowledge, and work with what you have and with whoever comes, because the experience is that you'll get about, well, if you're lucky, 5% of people who will come. If you have a very big company, it might only be 0.5% of people, but those who come are the right ones, and work with those. Use existing sources and offers. There's a lot out there by now, and it's getting more with every month that passes. This is a good tactic I found. Find somebody who's willing, stupid enough to do a talk with you, and have it be 2 or 3 months in the future, and just try and do your best by then, because you'll learn so much in this time, because you'll have to deliver when the time has come. And never give up. Yeah. So I'm happy to connect with whoever wants to. You can find me on LinkedIn. This is the Miro board again. You can write me an email. Yeah. So that was that. Thank you.